American. She hasn't paid for the toile de jouy chair covers we made her last April. I had a dull time, too. Didn't hold a card all the evening and came away £4.10 to the bad.
Poor Mumsy.
I'm lunching at Viola Chasms. What are you doing? I didn't order anything here, I'm afraid.
Nothing so far. I can always go round to Brat's.
Oh, it's so expensive. I'm sure if we ask Chambers, she'll be able to get you something in. I thought you were certain to be out.
Well, I still may be. It isn't 12 yet. Most of Beaver's invitations came to him at the last moment, occasionally even later, when he had already begun to eat a solitary meal from a tray. "John, darling, there's been a muddle and Sonia has arrived without Reggie. Could you be an angel and help me out? Only be quick, because we're going in now." Then he would go headlong for a taxi and arrive with apologies after the first course. One of his few recent quarrels with his mother had occurred when he left a luncheon party of hers in this way.
"Where are you going for the weekend?"
Hetton.
Who's that? I forget."
Tony Last.
Yes, of course. Yeah, she's lovely. He's rather a stick. I didn't know you knew them."
"Well, I don't really. Tony asked me in Brat's the other night. He may have forgotten."
"Oh, send a telegram and remind them. It's far better than ringing up. Gives them less chance to make excuses. Send it tomorrow just before you start. They owe me for a table."
"What's their dossier?"
"I used to see her quite a lot before she married. She was, Brenda Rex, Lord St. Cloud's daughter, very fair, underwater look. People used to be mad about her when she was a girl. Everyone thought she would marry Jock Grant Menzies at one time. Wasted on Tony Last. He's a prig. I should say it was time she began to be bored. They've been married 5 or 6 years. Quite well off. Everything goes in keeping up the house. I've never seen it, but I've an idea it's huge and quite hideous. They've got one child, at least. Perhaps more."
"Mumsy, you are wonderful. I believe you know about everyone."
"That's a great help. All a matter of paying attention while people are talking."
Mrs. Beaver smoked a cigarette and then drove back to her shop. An American woman bought 2 patchwork quilts at 30 guineas each. Lady Metroland telephoned about a bathroom ceiling. An unknown young man paid cash for a cushion. In the intervals between these events, Mrs. Beaver was able to descend to the basement where 2 dispirited girls were packing lampshades. It was cold down there, in spite of a little oil stove, and the walls were always damp. The girls were becoming quite deft, she noticed with pleasure, particularly the shorter one who was handling the crates like a man.
"Oh, that's the way," she said. "You're doing very nicely, Joyce. I'll soon get you onto something more interesting."
"Thank you, Mrs. Beaver." They'd better stay in the packing department for a bit, Mrs. Beaver decided, as long as they would stand it. They had neither of them enough chic to work upstairs. Both had paid good premiums to learn Mrs. Beaver's art. Beaver sat on beside his telephone. Once it rang, and a voice said, "Mr. Beaver, will you please hold the line, sir? Mrs. Tipping would like to speak to you." The intervening silence was full of pleasant expectation. Mrs. Tipping had a luncheon party that day, he knew. They had spent some time together the evening before, and he had been particularly successful with her. Someone had chucked. "Oh, Mr. Beaver, I am so sorry to trouble you. I was wondering, could you possibly tell me the name of the young man you introduced me to last night at Madame de Tromet's? The one with the reddish moustache? I think he was in Parliament." "Oh, yeah, I expect you mean Jock Grant Menzies." "Yes, that's the name. You don't by any chance know where I can find him, do you?" "Oh, he's in the book. But I don't suppose he'll be at home now. You might be able to get him at Brat's at about 1. He's almost always there." "Jock Grant Menzies, Brat's Club. Thank you so very much. It is kind of you. I hope you will come and see me some day. Goodbye." After that the telephone was silent. At 1 o'clock Beaver despaired. He put on his overcoat, his gloves, his bowler hat, and with neatly rolled umbrella set off to his club, taking a penny bus as far as the corner of Bond Street. The air of antiquity pervading Brat's, derived from its elegant Georgian facade and finely panelled rooms, was entirely spurious, for it was a club of recent origin, founded in the burst of bonhomie immediately after the war. It was intended for young men to be a place where they could straddle across the fire and be jolly in the card-room without incurring scowls from older members. But now these founders were themselves passing into middle age. They were heavier, balder, and redder in the face than when they had been demobilized, but their jovial